Esther was once a young Jewish girl. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah, meaning myrtle. She lived many years ago, far from her ancestral home. Persia was a vast and powerful empire then. Sadly, Esther was an orphan. Her mother and father were no longer with her. Life presented her with challenges from a very young age. She faced an uncertain future in a foreign land. She was just a small girl in a very big world. Her kind cousin Mordecai took her in. He raised her as if she were his own daughter. He loved her dearly and provided for her needs. Mordecai was a man of strong faith. He taught Esther about God and their people's traditions. Under his care, Esther grew into a beautiful young woman, but her beauty was not just outward. She possessed an inner grace, a gentle spirit, and a kind heart. Mordecai's guidance shaped her character profoundly. One day, the mighty King Ahasuerus of Persia needed a new queen. His previous queen had displeased him greatly, so a search began throughout the kingdom. Many beautiful young women were brought to the palace. Esther was among them, chosen for her remarkable beauty. It was a path she did not choose for herself, yet God's unseen hand was guiding her steps. From a humble orphan to a potential queen. What a surprising turn of events. Life in the royal palace was strange and new. It was filled with luxury and grandeur, but it was also a place of rules and secrets. Mordecai had given Esther important advice. He told her not to reveal her Jewish heritage. Esther listened carefully and obeyed him. She kept her identity hidden for a time. This quiet obedience and humility would prove vital. She was a queen, but she remembered where she came from. Her heart remained grounded. Trouble soon appeared in the kingdom. A man named Haman rose to a high position. He was a proud and arrogant man. He demanded that everyone bow down to him. But Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused. Mordecai would only bow to God. This refusal filled Haman with terrible anger. His hatred for Mordecai grew intense. He began to plot a dreadful revenge. He wanted not just Mordecai, but all Jewish people to suffer. Haman was cunning and deceitful. He went to King Ahasuerus with lies. He spoke ill of the Jewish people. He convinced the king to issue a terrible decree. A law was signed and sent throughout the empire. It declared that on a specific day, all Jews were to be destroyed, men, women, and children. This news brought immense sorrow and fear. There was weeping and mourning everywhere. The future for God's people looked bleak and terrifying. Mordecai learned about Haman's wicked plan. His heart was broken with grief and anguish. He tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. He sent an urgent message to Queen Esther. He told her everything that had happened. He explained the terrible danger facing their people. He pleaded with her to go to the king. He urged her to beg for mercy and save her people. The weight of this request was enormous. Esther received Mordecai's message with great fear. She knew the palace rules very well. No one could approach the king uninvited. To do so meant almost certain death unless the king held out his golden scepter. Esther had not been summoned by the king for 30 days. Her heart was troubled. How could she risk her life? Yet how could she remain silent? Her people were facing annihilation. She faced an impossible choice. Esther pondered Mordecai's powerful words. He had asked, "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" These words resonated deep within her soul. She realized her position was not an accident. God had placed her there for a reason. She could not let fear paralyze her now. Her people, her family were counting on her. She knew she had to act. She had to find a courage she didn't know she possessed. So Esther made a brave and difficult decision. She resolved to go before the king, uninvited. But first, she turned to her greatest strength, her faith. She sent a message back to Mordecai. She asked him to gather all the Jews in Susa. They were to fast and pray for her. For 3 days and 3 nights they would seek God's help. Esther and her maids in the palace would do the same. She was preparing for a spiritual battle. It was then that Esther spoke her unforgettable words, words that echo with courage and surrender. She declared, "I will go to the king," which is against the law. She fully understood the grave danger. She knew she might not survive. And then she added with profound resolution, "And if I perish, I perish." These words were not a cry of despair. They were a statement of ultimate faith. She placed her life entirely in God's hands. The 3 days of fasting and prayer concluded. Esther adorned herself in her royal robes. She prepared to face the king and potentially her own death. Imagine the thoughts racing through her mind. The future of an entire nation rested upon her shoulders. The tension in the palace must have been palpable. Each step she took towards the king's inner court was heavy. She walked forward in faith, not knowing the outcome. Her courage was truly inspiring. Esther stood silently in the inner court of the king's palace. King Ahasuerus was seated on his royal throne. He saw her standing there, waiting. At that moment, he could have ordered her death. But God was at work, softening the king's heart. Instead of anger, the king felt favor towards her. He extended his golden scepter to Esther. This was a sign of mercy. It meant she could approach him and she would live. Relief must have washed over her. The king asked Esther what she wanted. He even offered her up to half of his kingdom. But Esther showed great wisdom and patience. She did not blurt out her urgent request immediately. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. She did this not once, but twice. This strategy built suspense. It also allowed her to choose the perfect moment. She was not just brave, she was also very clever. God gave her this wisdom. At the second banquet, the king again asked Esther for her petition. This time she spoke with fearless honesty. She revealed her true identity as a Jew. She exposed Haman's wicked plot to annihilate her people. The king was shocked and then filled with rage at Haman's treachery. Haman, who had planned such evil, faced the king's fury. His downfall was swift and complete. The terrible decree was reversed. The Jewish people were saved. Esther's extraordinary courage changed history. She risked everything she had, including her life. Because she dared to step out in faith, her entire nation was delivered. Her story is a powerful reminder. It shows us that God can use anyone, even an orphan girl. He can turn fear into faith and despair into hope. One person's bravery, rooted in God, can make an incredible difference. We too can find courage for our challenges. We can trust that God is with us always.